At this point, Grand Seiko certainly gets its flowers from models that have helped transform the image of the brand. However, as the brand has continued to elevate their offering of specifications with innovations like the 9SA5, the Tenograph, and their Constant Force Tourbillon, it has led to some to look past some of the greatest points of value within their collection. And today we're going to be looking at one of those models with the SBGW231. Let's jump in. So the watch we're going to be looking at today is of the manual winding variety, but if you want to get lost in all things spring drive, get a crash course for everything you need to know about this remarkable movement, we'll have a definitive guide in the description down below. In that article at the top, we'll have a link to a video that describes in more detail how this works, the history of its production. Also in the article, we'll explain the tri-synchro regulator, some of the different models and calibers available that are featuring a spring drive. Essentially a crash course, everything you need to know about this movement. If you are interested, a link will be in the description down below. So this SBGW231 looks back to the earliest days of Grand Seiko for inspiration, back to 1960 when Grand Seiko was launched. Intended to directly compete with what were then considered the higher tier watchmakers in Switzerland, the very first Grand Seiko was equipped with a manual winding caliber, the 3180, an in-house endeavor with built-in shock resistance, hacking seconds, and a regulating organ that facilitated fine-tune adjustment. Rated to -3 to +12 seconds a day in terms of its accuracy and capable to 45 hours of power reserve, the 3180 stacked up well compared to its Swiss counterparts, serving as the first watch in movement from Japan to be compliant with the standards of chronometry in Geneva. On top of its mechanical prowess, the first Grand Seiko also established a number of visual design codes that feel familiar now if you've seen shots of this SBGW231. But now jumping ahead to today, the fervor surrounding the spring drive and other movements within Grand Seiko's catalog has had an unintended side effect of overshadowing other gems and points of focus for the brand. But to overlook something as good as the 231, a refined stainless steel dress watch with a beautiful in-house mechanical caliber, is a crime I don't think you can afford to commit. Starting with a conversation on the case and wearing experience presented by the SBGW231, the watch is of a dimension set that will please the purists out there, with a 37.3mm case diameter, an 11.3mm thickness, and an abbreviated 44.3mm lug-to-lug metric. Even taking the prominently domed box section sapphire crystal into account, it will neatly slide underneath a shirt and jacket cuff, as you'd expect for a watch in this dressier position. Set between 19mm lugs, the 231 is equipped with a glossy alligator pattern strap that is thin and flexible, leaning into the vintage theme while tapering to 16mm and terminating with a milled pin buckle with the brand's wordmark. Moving beyond the dimension set, the case is straightforward, yet refined in its execution of surface finish. Following principles of case architecture from 1960, the SBGW provides a completely polished format broken up with defined facets on the sharply downswept lugs with distortion-free reflections. At3 is a 6mm push-pull crown and is equipped with prominent ridges for an easy wind and pairs with the case back, which is affixed with 6 tiny screws, in facilitating this watch's 30 meters of water resistance. Set over a primary surface with a matte finish texture in an ivory color, the 231 dial is an exercise in restraint paired with touches of elegant craftsmanship where it matters most. Now, one of the most unspoken traits for this watch is the dial's curvature, subtly tapering back to the case back as it reaches the farthest perimeter. Starting at those outskirts, linear markings are printed in black to denote the minutes, while polished and faceted indices are there to hold representation of their respective hours in a striking, detailed manner, holding up even underneath the most extreme macro scrutiny. At 12, 3, 6, and 9, the indices are doubled up, making orientation easier while making it easier to identify the faceting work on display. At center, a pair of Dauphine hands with a central facet separate the polished planes, with each of the tips of the 3 hands bent by hand to follow the contour of the crystal's inner surface and in turn the dial. In order to reduce thickness of the watch as a whole, the double dome crystal is closer to the dial than you might expect. Beyond an applied GS logo at noon with subtle Grand Seiko text just beneath, this dial simply epitomizes purity. Despite its origins, the majority of the modern Grand Seiko collection seems to opt for automatic and spring drive calibers, leaving their hand winding counterparts to be less appreciated, yet in this case case, we have one of their staple calibers in this regard, the 9S64. Unveiled in 2011, this caliber is an in-house movement in every sense of the word, operating at 4 Hz, 28,800 vibrations per hour, offers hacking seconds, and lengthy power reserve of 72 hours thanks to the help of its Sprawn 510 mainspring, constructed from proprietary materials. Further, the entire escapement benefits from MEMS, or microelectric mechanical systems, that allow for micro-machining of individual movement components and a more efficient escapement, and a package that was developed independently from the ground up and is not simply a 9S65 with the absence of a rotor. Another hidden feature of this movement is that it includes a bridle system that helps prevent the movement from being overwound, a feature usually only reserved for automatics. As is part of the brand ethos from the beginning, regulation and timekeeping are a priority, with this movement being adjusted in 6 positions, one more than the COSC standard, and is rated to a solid -1 to +10 seconds a day for what the brand calls normal usage, and a tighter -3 to +5 seconds a day for its claimed mean daily rate. In any case, the sample we have here, we tested across 5 different positions, and it was running between +2 to +4 seconds a day. The movement finishing is also quite nice and is on full display given the absence of a rotor, showcasing waves across the central bridges, polished screw heads, a nice array of visible jewels that Grand Seiko produced themselves, and some intricate snailing on the ratchet wheel. So now let's unpack and talk a little bit more about this Grand Seiko SBGW231. This is a model that I truly enjoy, and I think it is often overlooked by many enthusiasts. First, let's talk about some of the challenges with the watch. It might be a challenge and consideration for some out there. One is it is a smaller watch, and given some dimension, sets of certain Grand Seikos, this is going to be towards the smaller end of things. So if you're somebody that wants more of a modern feel on wrist, this perhaps might be just too small for you. It's not overly dainty by any means, but for some could be towards that end where it might not be as easy to pull off. And then in alignment with that, you also are getting a package that is more dressy compared to even some of the standards of Grand Seiko. And with all of the craze around sports pieces, that also might be difficult for some in 2023 to maybe consider. But now let's shift over to some of the pros. First off, I think where this watch is positioned, it represents under $5,000 a package that is so difficult to beat. You're talking about just in that range between $4,000 to $5,000 for a watch that has a in-house movement on the inside, very solid case and dial finishing. And for those that are looking for that pure dress watch approach, you're going to be hard pressed to find one with this dimension set and all these other features that are going to come with it. There's a purity to this watch, and it's very understated, but there are cool things in the details. You talk about the faceting on those indices, the applied elements of the dial, the hands and their curvature, the dial's curvature overall. This is one of these watches that has more to meet the eye without making it a big statement in doing so. And another thing I want to just throw out here just at the end is Grand Seiko has really been prioritizing continuing to elevate different parts of their collection, different just tech that's going to be involved in their movements. You're looking at the constant force tourbillon that they released, the tentograph, an automatic chronograph, the 9SA5, a proprietary escapement system. But then you have this segment where you're talking about what is some of the best value you can have under $5,000 in luxury watches. Nowadays, it's getting harder to think about a long list of watches that you can include here with what's going on with a lot of the pricing dynamics. But this is a watch that has remained steady in that regard and has become one of the best representations of value in its price range, particularly if you're somebody that's going for a dress watch under $5,000, because quite frankly, it's hard to compete with this one. But all right, guys, that's my take looking at this SBGW231. Have you ever handled this watch or any of these SBGW models? What are your thoughts? Love to see some ownership stories as well down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Really would appreciate that, and it does help out the channel. Also check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. How we're able to fund all of these productions is through selling watches on our site. So if you are in the market for a watch, we would love to have your business. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.